And there you have visuals. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Lumbini for the Buddha Purnima. He is at the Maya Devi temple. You can see the visuals on your screens right now. This is part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Nepal. He is currently at the Maya Devi temple in Lumbini. This is to boost socio-cultural ties between India and Nepal. Currently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at Lumbini. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently at the Maya Devi temple right now, where he will attend a special prayer. He is accompanied by his counterpart, Prime Minister Sherdogeba of Nepal. Later on, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also expected to participate in the foundation laying ceremony of a Center for Buddhist Culture and Heritage in Lumbini. Now, Lumbini is located in the Terai region of southern Nepal and is considered one of the holiest places of Buddhism, as Lord Buddha was born there. Now, Prime Minister Modi is currently, you can see the visuals on your screens right now. These are live visuals coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at the Maya Devi temple. He's commenced his Nepal visit with a special prayer here. He is accompanied by his counterpart, Prime Minister Sherdogeba. Prime Minister Modi is shortly going to be attending a special prayer here in Lumbini at the Maya Devi temple. Later on, the Prime Minister will also participate in the foundation laying ceremony of a Center for Buddhist Culture and Heritage in Lumbini. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Lumbini on the occasion of Buddha Purnima. This is in fact Prime Minister Modi's fifth visit to Nepal since assuming his post in 2014. Now, on Sunday, ahead of his visit, Prime Minister Modi had said that India's ties with Nepal are unparalleled and that he was looking forward to offering prayers at the Maya Devi temple. You can see the visuals that are coming in from the Maya Devi temple right now from Nepal. Now, this trip comes following an invitation from Nepal Prime Minister, who is currently with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Sherdogeba, who visited the Indian capital last month. Now, Prime Minister Modi and Sherdogeba are currently at the Maya Devi temple in Lumbini. Prime Minister Modi is also likely to speak at a Buddha memorial ceremony organized by the Lumbini Development Trust and will also lay the foundation stone of a Buddhist center here. He will also then later on be holding bilateral talks with his Nepalese counterpart, where both the leaders are expected to exchange views on Nepal-India cooperation and emerging issues concerning both the countries. Now, this visit is of special significance. It also marks the growing ties between the two neighbors. Like I mentioned earlier, Nepal's Prime Minister Sherdogeba was in India last month, and this trip comes after Nepal Prime Minister's invitation. Now, this visit is expected to contribute to further strengthening of age-old socio-cultural bonds between the two nations and also to reaffirm India's neighborhood-first approach. So, as you can see right now, these are the visuals coming in live right now. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently at the Maya Devi temple, where he is set to attend a special prayer. Following the prayer, the Prime Minister will also be participating in the foundation laying ceremony of a Centre of Buddhist Culture and Heritage in Lumbini. Ahead of his visit to Nepal, Prime Minister Modi on Sunday had reiterated that India's ties with Nepal are unparalleled and that he was looking forward to offering prayers at the Maya Devi temple where he is currently, and the visuals are coming in from Nepal's Lumbini. Now, this trip to Nepal comes following an invitation from Nepal Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, who visited the Indian capital last month. And Prime Minister Modi and Sher Bahadur Deuba are currently at the Maya Devi temple to offer prayers on the occasion of Buddha Jayanti. The Prime Minister is also set to hold bilateral talks with his Nepalese counterpart. Both the leaders are set to exchange views on Nepal-India cooperation and emerging issues concerning both the countries. Now, this visit is especially significant as it is a sign of growing ties between the two neighbors. Now, this trip to Nepal, it will contribute to further strengthening of the age-old socio-cultural bonds between the two nations. Also, it will reaffirm India's neighborhood-first approach. There you can see Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently at the Maya Devi temple. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently in Lumbini in the Maya Devi temple. As you can see from the visuals on your screens right now, this is Prime Minister Modi's fifth visit to Nepal since assuming post in 2014. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Nepal Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba are set to offer prayers here on the auspicious occasion of Buddha Jayanti. Later on, the Indian Prime Minister is also set to participate in the foundation laying ceremony of a Centre for Buddhist Culture and Heritage in Lumbini. You can see the visuals on your screen coming in live right now from Nepal. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at the Maya Devi temple right now, where he will be attending a special prayer. He is currently accompanied by his counterpart, Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba of Nepal. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently at the Maya Devi temple right now with his Nepali counterpart, Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba. The Prime Minister is later on expected to participate in the foundation laying ceremony of a Centre for Buddhist Culture and Heritage in Lumbini. And currently we're being joined by Saloni Murarka live from Lumbini. Saloni, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us about what's going on ground right now in Lumbini? We know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is with his counterpart at the Maya Devi temple. What can you tell us about the schedule for the day?
Of course, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just landed and he was welcomed by his Nepalese counterpart, Shehbaz Deva, along with the other government dignitaries. And now both the Prime Ministers have proceeded towards the temple, and both the Prime Ministers are attending the main ceremony that is scheduled at the Maya Devi temple. And after that is a 45-minute long ceremony, after which very important foundation stone will be laid, and that is for the monastery that will be built with India's support, which I think experts have said that it is India does not have a monastery in Lumbini of itself, and that Modi's biggest visit is an opportune time to remedy the situation and announce the establishment of a Indian monastery. And later in the day, the Prime Minister Deva will also hold a bilateral talk with his Nepalese counterpart Shehbaz Deva, during which it is expected that Shehbaz Deva will seek Indian assistance to develop a hydropower project,
Right.
and also discuss on the cross-border. Yes.
Right. All right, Saloni, thank you so much for bringing us all the updates. Do continue to stay with us. We will track this very closely. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Dr. Rajan Kumar, who is a foreign policy expert. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. How do you assess the significance of this visit by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
I think it's geopolitics, because Nepal is a buffer state between China and India, and from that security perspective, it becomes very, very important. We have seen how the smaller countries which have abandoned the policy of neutrality, that has created a lot of crises. The Ukraine is one example. So for me, and China has absolutely no qualms about supporting a regime which is authoritarian, changing a regime which has been democratic. We have seen that in Sri Lanka. We have seen that in Maldives. Pakistan is a classic example. So that's number one. But also for me, the second important issue is the political and economic stability in Nepal. Because Nepal is under pressure. Let me tell you that economy of Nepal is under crisis. Although people are saying that it cannot be like Sri Lanka, but there is 18 billion trade deficit even today, and out of that 5 billion trade deficit is with India. And inflation is very high. Inflation is almost like a 5-year high of around 7 to 8%. And there are other issues like GDP to debt ratio, and also remember that 7 to 8 million people, which means 60 to 70 lakh people from Nepal work in India, and they have not been working, first because of COVID, and second after the kind of crisis that we have. Because of that, remittances are not going back to Nepal. So political and economic stability for me is very, very important, because if we do not have a stable neighbor, so we cannot have a stable neighborhood policy. And the neighborhood first policy is one of the priorities of Prime Minister Modi. So these are the broader issues, but also coming to bilateral aspect, we know that from the bilateral viewpoint, two issues are very, very important. One is the border issue, and the second one is the connectivity. And I'm sure that we must be showing about the connectivity through railways, through power. And Nepal is a power surplus state today. So because Nepal has a deficit, $5 billion trade deficit with India, so some of that can be compensated if through that extra power that Nepal has, and it can supply to India. And of course, as you rightly pointed out just now, your reporter was reporting from Lumbini. So the cultural aspect with Nepal is very, very important. China has been actively pursuing the soft power diplomacy in Nepal, and we cannot allow China to become a powerful player in Nepal. Otherwise, we'll have a crisis on our border. So these are the major issues, according to me. And Prime Minister visit is very, very important for cultural reasons, but of course, a broader geopolitics which is emerging in the neighborhood.
All right. Well, Dr. Rajan Kumar, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with your insights.
Thank you.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently in Lumbini, as you can see right now from the visuals coming in on your screen. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Nepalese Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, they are set to attend a special prayer at the Maya Devi temple as well.
All right, so these are live visuals that are coming in from Lumbini in Nepal, where India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is, of course, on the occasion of Buddha Purnima, visiting the neighbouring nation of Nepal. Remember, this, of course, is a very crucial bilateral meeting that he will, of course, have with the Nepalese Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba. The two nations, of course, share historical and very close cultural linkages. Over the last few years, there had been a few hiccups in the India-Nepal equation, but that, of course, seems to have been sorted out. But this, of course, is going to be a crucial step in furthering the India-Nepal ties. And I'm told that we have Dr. Rajan Kumar, who's a foreign policy expert. He's still with us on our broadcast. Now, Dr. Kumar, this is a crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister, especially considering the fact that over the course of the last few years, India-Nepal equation had hit a few hiccups, but that is now attempted to be smoothened out by the Indian Prime Minister. He's there on the occasion of Buddha Purnima. It's a very important day, and he's, of course, there to strengthen the historical and the cultural linkages between the two sides. Dr. Rajan Kumar, if you can hear me, my question to you, of course, was this visit by the Indian Prime Minister goes on to strengthen the India-Nepal equation further. For the last few years, there had been a few hiccups in terms of what had been happening between India and Nepal. But those challenges, it appears, will need to be overcome, and the Indian Prime Minister is, of course, working towards that end. All right, there seems to be a bit of an issue with the line. They will try and get Dr. Rajan Kumar back online with us. But these, remember, are images that in many ways will define the India-Nepal equation in the days to come. The Prime Minister is, of course, in Lumbini, and this is a crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister. Remember, India and Nepal have been very close partners. India has, of course, been, India and Nepal share a land border and go back in history as very close allies. And this, of course, is the relationship that is to be strengthened in this meeting and in the future. Remember, this, of course, is going to be a crucial partnership within South Asia. All right, I'm told that we have Dr. Rajan Kumar back with us online. Dr. Kumar, my question to you, of course, was this is a crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister to Nepal. How do you see this equation going forward?
I think, this is very important visit because, if you want to check China from containing India, so we cannot allow the border states, especially the buffer state like Nepal, to come under the influence of China. Second is, as I said earlier, the economic and political stability. Nepal is under pressure. Economically, there is 18 billion trade deficit of Nepal, and we need to support Nepal to remain economically and politically stable.
Absolutely. And also, the Prime Minister is in Lumbini today, and this is a Buddhist circuit that India and Nepal will, of course, look at strengthening, and this is something that can be developed as a major religious tourism circuit that India and Nepal can together develop further.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is important because, we need, because this area has been totally ignored. India has amazing scope for, advancing the Buddhist tourism, although we have developed Gaya and other places, Buddhist, in Gaya, Sanchi, etc. But there's a lot of scope, where we can connect not just Nepal, but also other countries, Thailand and Southeast Asian states. So from that perspective, this becomes important. And also, please remember that China has been very active as far as the soft power diplomacy in Nepal is concerned. Lumbini, which is a Buddhist center, and Lumbini, China has invested $3 billion. And only now we have started pursuing a policy that we have committed $1 billion in Lumbini, and China has developed the airport and other infrastructure in Lumbini. So China has been very active in hard power, but also in soft power. And we need to counter that because traditionally India and Nepal, they're one of the closest neighbors, and the kind of the interaction that we had culturally, politically, and this was almost like what you see in the European Union, the kind of agreement where there is no restriction, whether it's trade or the migration of people. But unfortunately, because of politics, we had ups and downs in our relationship with Nepal.
Right.
In 2019, when KP Sharma Oli was the leader, so he started what is called as cartographic nationalism, and the political parties, especially the Maoist parties and the Communist Party, they also created an impression that India is a hostile neighbor. So that perception needs to be challenged. And Prime Minister Modi's visit, which was preceded by Prime Minister of Nepal's visit to India, so they are very important developments. And Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, he is considered to be a very close friend of India. So we should try to kind of develop very close ties with Nepal, and in that context, I see that Prime Minister Modi's visit is very, very crucial.
Absolutely, indeed. And you brought up that very crucial issue of cartographic expansion that Nepal, of course, resorted to under their former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, who was not seen as very friendly towards India. He'd made a whole array of statements that did not go down well with the Indian leadership here. But the issue of Lipu Lake, Limpiadura and Kalapani, which Nepal now claims to be a part of their territory, but these are, of course, under India's control. How do you see this issue of, a border dispute getting resolved between India and Nepal?
Saleh, what I think is that, out of, 98% of the border between Nepal and India, they do not have any problem. So only in Susta and this Kalapani, these are the two areas where we have certain issues. And because of the nature of change of politics, because sovereignty has become very, very important in today's context, and every country is trying to engage in what I call cartographic nationalism. All the countries actually do it. So in that context, this issue of Kalapani became very, very important. But what I see that Nepal and India have come to an understanding that they are not going to focus on the areas where we have certain problems, certain concerns, and especially the Kalapani area, and they are going to focus on broader issues. Today, Nepal is, let me tell you that Nepal is facing economic as well as political crisis.
Absolutely.
We have seen that, the constitution, the way the regimes were changing, and internal rivalries which were there in the ruling party just 2 years back. So we have to provide political and economic support to Nepal. In my view, the border issues can be resolved with negotiation, and we have to be, as a powerful country in South Asia, we have to be very generous in negotiating with the states like Nepal.
Right.
So that is there, but at the same time, these issues can be the back issue. The main issue is the economy. Main issue is the security, that we should not allow Nepal to come under the influence of China. And China is very active in Nepal. And we have seen how China played a dirty role in Sri Lanka, also in Maldives, and Pakistan is a classic example, as I said earlier. So Nepal, in that context, very, very important for India. So in my view, border issues can be kept at the back burner at the moment.
Right.
Other issues can be discussed. And that's why Prime Minister visit, if you see the statement, the joint statement between the two states when Sher Bahadur Deuba came to India, the Prime Minister of Nepal. So when he came, the border issue didn't figure much in that joint statement, which
Absolutely.
means that they have agreed to work on other important issues and gradually negotiate on the issues which are difficult.
Absolutely, indeed. That indeed is correct. But Dr. Kumar, the fact that India, the Prime Minister is there, he's trying to develop this Buddhist circuit, and there's also the Ramayana circuit that also is being jointly developed by both the nations. But the issues between India and Nepal are much bigger than that. This is a geopolitical issue, and as you correctly pointed out, China is very active in Nepal. India and Nepal share historical and cultural linkages. The same cannot be said between Nepal and China, but China is, of course, making a very long-term concerted effort to try and increase its influence in Nepal. Do you think India should be much more active in terms of how it deals with the issue of Nepal, especially in terms of increasing the economic linkages, the technological and other aspects of this bilateral relationship?
Oh, without any doubt. Please remember that Nepal is also a part of Belt and Road Initiative, which is the flagship project of Xi Jinping. And we somehow, after the 1990s, we were not very active because of our own issues, and also we didn't realize that China will come so fast in our neighboring states like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. So we ignored some of the important things, and also because China has very deep pockets. So China can buy some of the politicians. China can also engage in a lot of corrupt activities, and China has no compunction about supporting a regime which is very authoritarian, supporting a regime which does not believe in democracy. But we believe in democracy, and we'll have to find a way to stop the Chinese influence. And for that, remember, if you want to counter the BRI, it cannot be countered just by saying that we have very strong cultural historical ties, because these smaller states need actual support, the financial support from the bigger countries. And since we cannot match, let's accept that we cannot match the Chinese economic power at the moment, the amount of money that China can invest in other countries, but we can engage in other things. For instance, capacity building, sustainable development program, renewable energy. Because Nepal recently, the last time when Sher Bahadur Deva came to India, Nepal became a part of Solar Alliance, and we have been very active in the solar energy, and India is one of the leaders in Solar Alliance. So the capacity building of where the Nepalese students come and get training. We can also train army, police personnel, etc. The IT sector, service sector in India is very developed, and we can support Nepal in developing a similar kind of service sector there. So we can provide an alternative to the Chinese model of growth, which is very China believes in supporting country, but at the same time many of the countries are falling in what we call it debt diplomacy, where these countries have huge debt which they are unable to pay. Sri Lanka is the classic example at the moment. So Nepal can also face that kind of crisis. So we believe in providing alternative model of growth, and we should be active. And one more thing, that connectivity is also important. If you want to counter BRI, you cannot counter unless until you have very intense this rail network, road network, and digital network. And we should try to develop a network with not only Nepal but also with some of the other Southeast Asian countries. BIMSTEC is one example. When Prime Minister first time became the Prime Minister, he invited all the BIMSTEC leaders for the inauguration, etc. But we are lagging behind in BIMSTEC, and we have to pursue this very, very carefully. Also, one important point, in India, the areas which are very undeveloped today are the eastern part of India. And if you want to develop the eastern part of India, you have to provide a very intense connectivity network with Nepal, with Southeast Asian countries. And Prime Minister Modi's policy tells you about that kind of policy, where he talks of Act East policy. Earlier it was Look East policy, and now it has become Act East policy. So you'll have to create a network where you connect Nepal, but also some of the other Southeast Asian states, and we can develop our northeastern part of India and also eastern part of India through that network.
I think you've summed it up really well there. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Rajan Kumar, for joining us and getting us all those insights. This of course, is the big takeaway from this, that India has historical and cultural linkages with Nepal, but India cannot just rely on these, because Nepal is being very hotly pursued by China, which is trying to increase its influence in the Himalayan nation. This is effectively a region that India had held very close to it. Nepal is our very close neighbor, with whom, as Rajnath Singh had described, roti beti ka rishta, effectively saying that this is a nation with which we share very close blood relations as well. And now the challenge is, of course, much bigger. The Chinese are making a very concerted long-term effort to try and increase their influence. The Indian Prime Minister is, of course, there. He is in Lumbini today. He's meeting the Nepalese Prime Minister, Sher Bahadur Deoba. There is a lot of problems within the Nepalese politics as well. The former Prime Minister in Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, was seen to be slightly hostile towards India. He had made a lot of statements which, of course, did not go down well with the Indian leadership. There's also the issue of cartographic expansion, which KP Sharma Oli resorted to. These are difficult. These are really difficult issues that need to be dealt with, but they'll have to be dealt with in an appropriate manner with a strategy that will, of course, will have to, in many ways, counter the expansion that the Chinese are trying to, in fact, in many ways, bring Nepal under their sphere of influence. So, of course, India will have to try and counter that. So it's not just about historical and cultural relationships. It's not just about the Buddhist and the Ramayana circuit, which the two nations are trying to jointly develop. It'll have to go much bigger. This is about economy. This is about trying to develop, in many ways, the economic and the financial ties between the two nations. So this is a crucial equation between India and Nepal, and this, of course, is going to define to a very large extent what happens in South Asia. Nepal, of course, had been a close friend of India, both culturally and historically, and this, of course, is the equation that is being attempted to be strengthened further by the Indian Prime Minister's visit to the Himalayan nation. And I earlier also spoke with Ranjit Ray. He's the former Indian ambassador to Nepal, and this is what he told me, speaking to me a little while back. Listen in.
It's happening on a very important day. You know, Buddha Jayanti is when the world commemorates the birth of the Buddha, the day of enlightenment, and the day he achieved Mahaparinirvan. And, you know, all the major sites of Lord Buddha's life are shared by Nepal and by India. So by going to Lumbini today, I think the Prime Minister is sending a very powerful message of A, our shared civilizational heritage, and B, our commitment to develop this Buddhist circuit for about, you know, the 500 million devotees of Lord Buddha, the Buddhists in the world. So it's a very important visit from this perspective. Of course, whenever two prime ministers meet, they discuss the entire gamut of the relationship. So this is another important opportunity for India-Nepal relations, cooperation, partnership in hydropower, in infrastructure, in connectivity, to be discussed at the highest level and to be given a fresh impetus. China's footprint in Nepal is increasing significantly, as well as their role and presence in Lumbini, which is pretty close to our border. In fact, the largest monastery, Buddhist monastery in Lumbini belongs to the Chinese. And the Chinese have been sponsoring a lot of conferences on Buddhism. Chinese tourists have been coming to Lumbini. There have been reports of, you know, large Chinese investments. So clearly China is a major factor. And I think, you know, keeping this in mind is also important for India, because as I said, all the major heritage sites of Buddhism are shared between Nepal and India. And India's presence in Lumbini in the past, was relatively insignificant. All we had done was to make one small museum building. No Indian Prime Minister, at least in the last few decades, has ever visited Lumbini. So Prime Minister Modi's visit is very significant. And also, I think, the fact that he's laying the foundation stone for a Buddhist cultural and heritage center is also very important. And, this will be a major development in marking India's presence in Lumbini. And linked to that, I think it's very important to review and to see how the Buddhist circuit between India and Nepal can really become a reality.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.